Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. I'm happy to be here with you today as we're going to address a very important issue, a question of trust, a question of facts and the information being disseminated to the American people, because it will have an impact on our future and our relations with the rest of the world. It's important for you to know what is the truth and what is fiction, what is merely politics being used to get advantages for various political factions. But before we get started, we want to address, if this is the first time that you have joined our channel, we want to thank you and we welcome you. We want you to know that we do long-form political commentary, and every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream with you. We reach out on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, DLA, all the social media that the internet overlords will allow to hear your voice from anywhere in the world, to listen to you, reach us with your tweets, your chats, and your phone calls, and to tell us what you think about the issues are affecting us all. Because we believe in your unalienable right to free speech. Regardless of whether your government agrees, regardless of whether the internet overlords agree, we believe in your voice and your right to speak. And we hope that you will share that with us every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, with that said, we want to address the issue facing us today. And it's a very important issue because it's the question of, is our government telling us exactly the truth? Are our news media telling us the truth? Is there information being presented to the public that has a significant political bias that is meant only to deceive the American people? It's a serious issue. And we can tell you that we do know, having addressed this before in the past, it is something that is heavily discouraged by the internet overlords. But we will make the attempt anyway. Now, the first thing we want to address is, of course, what you may have seen on December 15th. There was this article from The Federalist, which states that the January 6th committee admits that they doctored a text message that was presented both to members of Congress as well as the American public. This is a very serious issue, and we want to be very clear here. This is no laughing matter. This is no simple statement. This has an impact because if members of Congress are introducing political bias, then they have subverted the actual purpose of the January 6th Commission and its investigation. And if that is supported and unquestioned by the mainstream media, then that is a collusion that will negatively impact the public. When we are dealing with issues of such severity and significance, it is absolutely important to make sure the information we are receiving is correct so that the American people, the true leaders of this nation, the ones who have all of the power of government, that the American people make the right decision based on the true information. And this will impact, of course, how we deal with other nations that look to America to lead in terms of democracy, in terms of peaceful changes of government, to be able to use us as the example that they will follow. So when we saw this article from The Federalist, we were taken aback. Again, The Federalist, while a credible news source, is a right-leaning news source. And therefore, we wanted to make sure this was correct. And we also want to make sure that people understand the context that we are looking at, because this is not new. Claims being made by both the media and members of Congress saying that the public had been lied to is not new. In fact, we can go back to 2017. This is July of 2017. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, in reflecting on the 2016 election, which she disagreed with, and which she questioned, and Nancy Pelosi had this statement to make to the American public.
This week, we saw cold, hard evidence of the Trump campaign, indeed the Trump family, eagerly intending to collude possibly with Russia, a hostile foreign power, to influence American elections.
That's her words. That she wanted to make sure and reveal to the American public that there was cold, hard evidence of collusion with Russia. I'm sure you've heard about this story. It's something that's been mentioned many times. In fact, there was, according to CBS News, Representative Adam Schiff said that plenty of evidence of Russia collusion hiding in plain sight. This was August of 2018, as reported by CBS News. Schiff said the congressional investigations into Russian meddling in the 2016 election, quote, revealed evidence that goes to the issue of conspiracy and collusion, a lot of which is now public, but did not elaborate. So Adam Schiff, the Democratic representative of California, a member of the House Intelligence Committee, made the allegation that there was collusion in Russia. The Mueller investigation, one of 3 investigations that lasted over 3 years and cost the American taxpayers over $30 million, we saw that Adam Schiff said that there was ample evidence of collusion in plain sight. He says, and I am quoting, I use that word very carefully. This because I also distinguish time and time again between collusion, that is, acts of corruption that may or may not be criminal, and proof of a criminal conspiracy. And that is a distinction that Bob Mueller made with the first few pages of his report. In fact, every act I pointed to as evidence of collusion has now been borne out. Well, that's not exactly correct. Because as we can see in this article from The Intercept, which is a far left-leaning organization, and the article by Glenn Greenwald, its creator and also recognized as a member of the far left, he wrote on April 18th of 2019, Robert Mueller did not merely reject the Trump-Russia conspiracy theories, he obliterated them. And in his article, he goes on to state, quote, in sum, Democrats and their supporters had the exact prosecutor they all agreed was the embodiment of competence and integrity in Robert Mueller. He assembled a team of prosecutors and investigators that countless media accounts heralded as the most aggressive and adept in the nation. They had subpoena power, the vast surveillance apparatus of the United States government at their disposal, a demonstrated willingness to imprison anyone who lied to them, and unlimited time and resources to dig up everything they could. The result of all that was not a single American, whether with the Trump campaign or otherwise, was charged or indicted on the core question of whether there was any conspiracy or coordination with Russia over the election. No Americans were charged or even accused of being controlled by or working at the behest of the Russian government. None of the key White House aides at the center of the controversy who testified for hours and hours, including Donald Trump Jr. or Jared Kushner, were charged with any crimes of any kind, not even perjury, obstruction of justice, or lying to Congress. That's important. And again, we want this to be in complete context, because when we hear that Congress is investigating the January 6th riots, when they are making accusations of insurrection, when they are arresting hundreds of American citizens and now looking to try and depose and remove members of Congress, it is a big deal. We need to be very sure of the people who are making these accusations, and their credibility comes into play. So when we hear Nancy Pelosi has stated that there is cold, hard evidence, as she said on July 17th, when we hear Representative Adam Schiff in 2018 tells us that there is plenty of evidence, and the fact is that there is no evidence. There are no cold, hard facts. When there is nothing but partisanship that can be seen as a result after 3 years, and the very absolute best attempt by Democrats to prove an idea that did not exist, that was not true, that was a fabrication from its start. When we have to question when those very same individuals now come to the American people and said that they have, again, evidence and incontrovertible facts that prove their assumptions once again. So we have a credible doubt, as we should have, when dealing with individuals who have been proven to lie for years to the American public to promote a political agenda. This is something that we have seen done in some of the worst of governments around the world, where leaders, authoritarians, have lied to their public to get a political gain. We see this every day in Iran. We see this every day in North Korea, and we see this around the world. This is not something that should be emulated by the American government. But let's bring this back to January 6th. And again, we want to make sure this is completely in context, because most recently there was a reveal presented to the U.S. Congress saying that there were text messages showing that there was a collusion, as is being made, the argument being made by some circles, saying that there was collusion between various entities, Republican elected officials, media personalities, and the Trump administration to try and coordinate an insurrection of the United States government. Of course, when we look through the actual text messages, we see statements like, "We need an Oval Office address. He has to lead now. It has gone too far and gotten out of hand." This was Donald Trump Jr., who is the former president's eldest son, as he texted Mark Meadows. Mark Meadows, who worked as the White House chief of staff for former President Donald Trump. And this was on January 6th. These are text messages coming from and to the White House at that time. Now, Liz Cheney presented a list of texts that she has received as part of the January 6th commission looking into what happened in the riot. And she presented texts by Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham, Brian Kilmeade, Donald Trump Jr., all going to Mark Meadows, the chief of staff, during the riot as it was ongoing. And we have to look at this and wonder, as Liz Cheney read through text messages from 5 different individuals sent to Mark Meadows, who appeared to be at the Capitol during the unrest. Quote, "These text messages leave me no doubt. The White House knew exactly what was happening here at the Capitol. Members of Congress, the press, and others wrote to Mark Meadows as the attack was underway. Quote, we are under siege here at the Capitol." That's one individual. They have breached the Capitol, a second person mentions. Quote, "Mark, protesters are literally storming the Capitol, breaking windows on doors, rushing in." A third person texted Mark Meadows, "Is Trump going to say something?" Well, these are all interesting statements, but this actually doesn't prove anything. We want to be very clear. Those statements, those text messages, are actually things that you would want to be notified to the White House, to the chief of staff of the president, that they should be made aware of an ongoing riot, that they should be made aware of a call for peace, that it is a request to hear the president to call people to stand down. We would have wanted to hear that from any member of Congress, any member of government, whenever there is an outrageous riot going on, where lives are endangered, when cities have been burned down, when any agency of the government is being attacked. You want that the chief executive of the United States to be informed and to take action to disperse such a riot. And that's what was done. That is not a negative thing. But there were other texts that were also presented by Representative Adam Schiff. And it was Lawrence O'Donnell on MSNBC who had something to say about that, which is a little different. I want you to hear it.
With the dramatic revelations delivered by the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th attack on the Capitol, the committee continues to add detail to the conspiracy led by Donald Trump to overturn the results of the presidential election on January 6th with the support of Republican senators and Republican members of the House. It was, at every step, a plot to violate the law. The January 6th committee has not released the names of any of the Republican members of Congress whose texts have been revealed. Some of them have been revealed since Sunday, and no Republicans are proud of those texts. None of them are proud of their texts. Not one of them stepped forward when their texts were made public and eagerly said, "Hey, that's me. I wrote that one."
Well, see, Mr. Lawrence, much like what we saw with Rachel Maddow, is not exactly telling the truth. It's kind of like we saw with Nancy Pelosi and with Adam Schiff. He's making allegations that aren't accurate, that aren't presenting the truth. They're out of context, kind of like what we saw being done by Representative Liz Cheney. The context is missing here, and it's inaccurate. So let's be very clear. First and foremost, there is no proof of a conspiracy. That's an allegation. It's a political allegation. But we did know publicly and well shown, being displayed to the American people on January 6th, that President Trump was having a rally, that there were concerns from many individuals, both Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, Conservatives, and Independents, that there were issues at that time. And there was a question of the votes, much like we saw in 2016 as Democrats came out and disputed the results that they had seen. And we have to be careful here because depending on how we say this, you will see this entire video killed and our channel shut down because some internet entities do not like people to ask questions or to review the facts and the past. That being said, we do know that there was a public outcry and a public statement by many members of Congress saying that there was an issue at the time on January 6th, and that there was a process which had been used by Democrats both in 2001, in 2016, and now, that would allow them to dispute, which is completely legal and part of the legal process. We've shown that on this program before. So that refutes part of what Mr. Lawrence is saying on MSNBC, that there is no proof of a conspiracy. This was a public action being done in front of the American public and told to the American public step by step. There was nothing hidden about that. And there were protests, as had been happening in Washington, D.C., repeatedly and consistently, both by members of Antifa and BLM, as well as by right-leaning organizations. And in the case of the right-leaning organizations, they normally cleaned up after themselves, leaving the area cleaner than they found it, and not one incident of arrest or violence had ever occurred previously. And no one would expect that it would be, that violence would be an outcome based on that prior action of protests with hundreds of thousands of individuals over several years by the right-leaning community. But he goes on to say, well, texts were presented and no one spoke about it. No one admitted that it was them. Well, again, we have to go back to the Federalists, but there are several other sources as well, as we will get to, that reveal that Representative Adam Schiff, when he presented the text that he is now alleging were damning and proof of a collusion, of a conspiracy, he never actually spoke to any of the members of Congress. He didn't give those representatives the text messages that he was using. He didn't actually contact anybody. They weren't told that this tweet or this text was going to be presented to the public. He never asked them the context of the messages that he wanted to present to the public. So, Mr. Lawrence, who easily should be aware of this, as we are, he works for an organization with thousands of individuals, with hundreds of individuals verifying everything that he is saying and double checking this information. He is well aware of the fact that Adam Schiff did not speak to anyone. He did not verify, nor did he make anyone aware of what he was going to present so that they would have any opportunity to make a reaction. But a reaction did in fact come. And it came from not just the Federalist, who presented that the very first thing we should be aware of is that there was a lie being told to the American people. MSNBC did not reveal to the American people that factually what was being presented to them was not even a text from Jim Jordan. And it was Representative Jim Jordan that he was using. That was a forwarded message. That Jim Jordan did not write that. In fact, the author of the text that was quoted in part by Representative Adam Schiff came from Joseph E. Schmitz, the Honorable Joseph E. Schmitz, who wrote a lengthy and complete description of a discussion draft on why there was a question on January 6th, a legal question based in the Constitution and based in the United States Code of Justice that we need to address. And this is something, as you can see, 4 pages of information and a summary of this legal opinion was in fact what was being forwarded on January 6th by Representative Jim Jordan, something that was not presented and not informed to the American people. So that's a big deal. But it gets to be a bigger deal because, again, as you may have noticed, and many on the left will not notice because it was not presented to them, this information was doctored. Jordan forwarded to Meadows a 3-paragraph legal summary from an attorney, Joseph Schmitz, summarizing a 4-page legal memorandum Schmitz had written regarding congressional certification of the 2020 electoral vote, the count. This document was doctored. Now you're going to say, but Mike, this is coming from the Federalist. No one on the left is covering this. Can we trust this? Is this a credible source? Even though we have seen for a fact the actual document that was sent to Jim Jordan and Representative Jim Jordan then forwarded on, we see the document. We know that it exists. We know that this is true. But how do we know that everything else is true? Well, because we have institutional organizations like the Gazette, which is a left-leaning, and this document comes from the left. January 6th committee admits to altering text message between Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan. The January 6th committee admitted it changed a text message between former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows and Representative Jim Jordan, excluding relevant context about how they wanted then Vice President Mike Pence to handle electoral votes. This is further confirmed by the Washington Examiner. January 6th committee admits to altering text message between Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan. So we want to be very clear. Even though texts were being presented to the public, it was not accurate. In fact, we can see, as we look to ground news, that there is a distribution almost 15 out of 15 sources. 13 are right-leaning, 2 are left-leaning. Those two left-leaning sources are not mainstream media sources, and none of them deny the fact that Adam Schiff did in fact alter documents and alter the texts that were presented. There is no question. There is proof. The proof is explicit that the text message that we are being told by Representative Adam Schiff, the same Representative Adam Schiff, who presented to the public and lied to the public and said that there is evidence of Russia collusion for years. For years, he stood by this statement year after year, saying that there is evidence of Russian collusion, only to be proven absolutely incorrect and false, to have lied to the American people that there is no evidence, that there was no Russian collusion. The same representative that pushed this false narrative, this political diatribe to try and affect the American people, to alter their perceptions, to gain a political advantage, that same Representative Adam Schiff is now altering text documents that we are seeing is being presented to the American people as proof of an allegation that he is making that has no validity to it. That documents are being taken out of context, that statements are being taken out of context to make us believe that there is a conspiracy when there is an obvious and clear concern for the American people that is being expressed. Because context matters. The message that is being sent out to the American people, that there is a collusion, that there is a conspiracy, in fact is a concern for American citizens, and in fact is a legal opinion based on our Constitution and our laws that is being shared amongst individuals. That doesn't sound like a conspiracy. All of this being done in the light of day. All of this being done live. Because if you remember, and we do, on January 6th, everyone was aware of what was happening, both what was happening in Congress and what was happening outside. Everyone was aware, and there was a large lead up for several months of all of the arguments that were being made. None of this was a surprise to the American people. What was surprise was the riot that took place in the halls of Congress, where one American citizen was killed. That's the death of Ashley Babbitt, as we've covered on this program before. We have seen 726 individuals arrested in reference to the January 6th riot. And we know that according to CNN, on December 11th, 50 rioters were sentenced. And I want to address that a little bit, because while we know that 50 people have been charged, many of them are like this case. In a misdemeanor case, Lamberth gave Frank Scavo 2 months in jail and a $5,000 fine, the legal maximum. Prosecutors sought only 2 weeks because Scavo organized buses to take 200 Trump supporters from eastern Pennsylvania to Washington, D.C. for the January 6th rally. Do you understand what's being done here? And we want to be very clear about that. It's a misdemeanor case, and a judge has sentenced an individual for being at the event because they drove people to the event. That Mr. Scavo took 200 people to the event. Not that he committed a crime, not that he entered or broke anything, that he took 200 people to a rally. And that was good enough to get a $5,000 fine and 2 months in jail. Rallies are not illegal. In the United States, other countries have different rules, but in the United States, as an expression of the First Amendment, It is fair and legal for individuals to rally together to express their opinion. It is legal for individuals to gather and to have a protest to express their ideas. This is the First Amendment in action. That is perfectly legal. In fact, we saw that throughout this nation during 2020, the second half of 2020, as many individuals banded together under the title of BLM and Antifa and went out and protested. As the media love to tell us, 97% of these events, as they, under their counting, were peaceful events. Mind you, that's not exactly correct in terms of the percentage, nor is it correct to say that they were mostly peaceful. Because as we have seen, mostly peaceful, according to CNN and MSNBC, that includes arson. So we know that 50 people have been charged on lesser charges. In fact, for the crime of driving people to a rally that is by law legal and by our Constitution absolutely acceptable. So we have to ask the question, what about the other people involved? What about the fact that there have been 726 people who have been charged with the Capitol riots? What about these individuals? Well, you can see a list of the charges, and we want to be very, very clear. Of the charges which are available and you can review, in each and every single case, not one person has ever been charged with insurrection or rebellion, which is a crime. It is 18 USC 2383, rebellion or insurrection. Whoever incites, sets foot, assists, or engages in any rebellion or insurrection against the authority of the United States or the laws hereof, or gives aid or comfort thereto, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 10 years or both, and shall be incapable of holding any office under the United States. So it is clear, and the definition is absolutely blatantly obvious what is rebellion and insurrection, and it is something that could be charged. And we want to be very clear. Of the 726 individuals who have been charged, not one has been charged with insurrection, and almost all of them have been misdemeanors. Not one has received rebellion or insurrection. In fact, when we look over the United States Attorney's Office, District of Columbia, 6 months afterwards, with 535 defendants being arrested from all 50 states of the United States, the criminal charges were including assault, resisting or impeding officers and employees, entering or remaining in a restricted federal building or grounds. There have been individuals who have been arrested and charged with assaulting a member of the media or destroying their equipment. We have seen defendants and individuals who have been arrested and charged with corruptly obstructing, influencing, or impeding an official proceeding. And we have seen individuals charged with a conspiracy to obstruct a congressional proceeding, conspiracy to obstruct law enforcement, or some combination of the above. But in every single case, all 535 individuals, in fact, all 726 individuals, there has not been one charge of rebellion or insurrection. As we hear from individuals like MSNBC and Mr. Lawrence, as he's speaking, that this is the biggest issue of America, that this was criminal. It's not an insurrection. If it were, there would be at least one person that would be charged with that. That doesn't exist. Now we know for a fact that they have to lie, that Adam Schiff and other members who are promoting this concept of an insurrection must lie to the American people, saying that legal drafts were somehow instructions to try and change the outcome of what happened in 2020. That legal documents supported by the Constitution and U.S. law, say that there should be challenges made, that this was, in fact, not what was said. They have to literally doctor the information that is being presented to the American people. And we have seen this done before. We have seen this done by Nancy Pelosi. We have seen this done by Representative Adam Schiff. And we're seeing it being done again. Now, you well may think that the rioters on January 6th were wrong. You may think they need to be punished by law, and they are. But to say that they were insurrectionists would be a misreading of the facts that we have at hand, both prior to and during that day. Yes, there has since been a political movement trying to convince us of something that didn't happen. In 11 months, nothing to show a conspiracy, not one charge of a conspiracy to subvert our government, not one. And now we have those same individuals who have proven themselves to be discreditable in the past for multiple years, both MSNBC, CNN, Representative Adam Schiff, Nancy Pelosi, and many others that have proven themselves more than willing to push a conspiracy theory for a political outcome, for a gain, for the effort of disinforming the American public. Does that mean that what happened on January 6th was an insurrection? No. It also does not, by itself, disprove it. But it does give us pause, and it should make you have pause. And it should ask you, why are they unwilling to tell us the truth in context and in completeness? As to the question that we had at the very beginning of this program, when we looked at this news, that there is an admission, we want to be clear on what that admission is. And every news media source confirms the following. Quote, the Select Committee on Monday created and provided Representative Schiff a graphic to use during the business meeting, quoting from a text message from a lawmaker to Mr. Meadows, that lawmaker being Jim Jordan. The spokesman wrote, going on, they say, quote, the graphic read on January 6, 2021, Vice President Mike Pence, as President of the Senate, should call out all electoral votes that he believes are unconstitutional as no electoral votes at all. Quote, in the graphic, the period at the end of that sentence was added inadvertently. The Select Committee is responsible for and regrets the error. So it is admitted, and in every single news media source, it is the exact same statement that the spokesman for the Select Committee on January 6th has admitted the committee altered the text, and they have admitted it to multiple news media sources, all confirming the same thing. Now you understand why the left-leaning news media will not publish this, will not present this to you, because they know that in knowing the truth, the public does not reach the same conclusion that they want you to have. It is wrong for the January 6th Commission to try and prove their point and creating this message of collusion by out of context and highly altered text messages and information. You cannot prove that you are true and correct by presenting a lie and misinformation. That is a fact. The links to everything we have spoken about are in the description. You can see it for yourself. But the fact is very simple. You've been lied to. Perhaps you think that we are incorrect, that we have not looked at enough sources. Perhaps you believe in reading the documents that you believe this supports the idea of an insurrection. And if so, we would like to hear your comments. We look forward to hearing all of your comments, and we hope that we will see you join us on Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to hear your voice in our live stream covering this and many other issues affecting us all.